Greetings guys, and welcome back to the channel. You know, one of the most divisive topics in the entire Zelda fandom is actually the topic of where each game fits into the timeline. Although, it may be better to say how the timeline seems to keep changing as Nintendo tries to accommodate for new Zelda titles. For instance, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom really threw us for a loop as much of their stories seem to have retconned some of the original timeline. I do have my own explanation as to why this is not true, but I will save that explanation for later since I know for some of you who are new to the Zelda universe, the timeline can be somewhat confusing to say the least. Hell, it can be sometimes confusing to some of us longtime Zelda fans as well. So in today's video, I will attempt to explain the entire Zelda timeline so far. So sit back, relax.
You may want to get some snacks
as we get into it. But before we do that, I have a bit of housekeeping to do. If you like what we do here and want to support the channel, please give the subscription button as well as the bell icon a big Master Sword pedestal plunge to never miss when a new video drops. Thank you in advance. This is the Zelda Timeline Explained. The Era of World's Creation. So, first things first. We will start from the very beginning with the original creation of the Zelda universe or world itself. In the beginning, the universe was a formless void called the Steel World, where any life that tried to form was devoured by Null. And if you don't know, Null is a being that existed in the void that wanted the nothingness of the void all to itself. The three golden goddesses descended upon the void and created the earth. Din, the goddess of power, formed the earth. Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, gave the order to the world. And Furore, the goddess of courage, created all life on the surface. To do this, the goddesses in turn imprisoned Null to stop it from devouring their creation. And while imprisoned, Null attempted to create rifts in time and space that would devour the world anyway and return it to the void of the Steel World. So to counter Null's counter, and to fix the rift, the goddesses then created a group of fairies called the Tres, or Tres. So, once Null was no longer a threat and they had finished their work, they went back to the heavens, but not before leaving a relic that represented all three of their virtues. This was the Triforce. And the land where the golden goddesses first descended became known as the Sacred Realm, which is where the goddesses stored the Triforce. And this marks the end of the Era of World Creation. The creation story of the Zelda universe is mentioned in several of the Zelda titles such as Skyward Sword, Tears of the Kingdom, Four Swords Adventure, The Minish Cap, and of course, Ocarina of Time, but Echoes of Wisdom really gives a more complete view of the happenings in this era. The Era of Hylia. Directly after the end of the Era of Creation, we begin the Era of Goddess Hylia, which is the backstory we are given in Skyward Sword. It was in this era Goddess Hylia was tasked with guarding the Triforce and was worshipped and adored by all of the tribes that resided on the earth. Then one day, through a gash in the earth arose the Demon King Demise, who wanted to claim the Triforce for himself and subjugate the entire world under his dominion. He raised a great army of demons and waged war against the entire land, taking the lives of millions of its inhabitants. To save the remaining humans, Hylia gathered them all onto an outcrop of land and then sent them into the skies, and to make sure that Demise and his hordes could not get to them, she made a cloud barrier separating the skies from the land below. That outcrop of land would later become Skyloft, and also the place where Hylia hid the Triforce. Hylia then rallied the remaining land dwellers and drove back Demise and his hordes of demons, sealing them and himself away. But unfortunately, during the war, Hylia suffered grave injuries. Furthermore, she knew that the seal that she had placed on Demise would not last forever, so she devised a plan. She created a spirit familiar, i.e. Fi, who would guide her chosen hero to reforge her goddess sword into the Master Sword. And since she knew that the Triforce could not be used by a god, Hylia shed her divinity and transferred her soul into the body of a mortal who, when she came of age, would be ready to use the Triforce alongside Hylia's chosen hero to destroy Demise once and for all. And this brings the Era of Hylia to a close. By the way, if you want a more detailed explanation of the battle between Hylia and Demise, I highly recommend you check out my Garihim Origins video after you're done with this one. I'll leave a link to it in the descriptions. The Sky Era. And now we move further down on our list to the Sky Era, which is literally where the main events of Skyward Sword takes place. Thousands of years after the war between Hylia and Demise, Hylia was reborn as Zelda in Skyloft. After the 25th annual Wing Ceremony, where Link was awarded the prized sailcloth and acknowledged as the hero, Link and Zelda decided to take a private flight on their loft wings. During the flight, Zelda is blown off her loft wing and abducted down to the surface via a tornado made by Girahim, who wanted to capture her to revive his master, Demise. But unfortunately for Girahim, Zelda was later rescued from his minions by Impa, who was sent back in time by Hylia to help her mortal incarnation. Long story short, Zelda regains her memories of being Goddess Hylia while visiting all of the sacred springs located throughout the lands. At the same time, Link is guided by the spirit of the sword, Fi, to pull the goddess sword from its pedestal, solidifying himself as Hylia's chosen hero. At the Temple of Time, Zelda and Impa narrowly escaped Girahim by going through the gate and destroying it behind them, which meant that Link wouldn't have to find another Gate of Time. He finds it conveniently at the sealed temple, but to awaken the second Gate of Time, Link has to seek out the 3 sacred flames to temper the goddess sword into the Master Sword. In the hope of finding Zelda, Link uses the gate to travel back in time to the Era of Hylia only a short while after Demise was sealed away. To sustain the seal, Zelda chooses to place herself into a centuries-long sleep. Now knowing exactly where Zelda is going to be in the present, Link returns to the present and gathers the pieces of the Triforce and uses it to destroy Demise. After Demise's, demise, Zelda finally awakens from her centuries-long slumber only to be captured by Girahim. Girahim in turn takes Zelda further back in time to when Demise is still alive and uses her soul essence to revive Demise into his true form. Demise draws his dark version of the Master Sword from Girahim's body and absorbs Girahim back into it. Amused that a human like Link had the nerve to stand up to him when all of the humans he had ever met were weaklings that ran at the mere sight of him, Demise challenges Link to face him in battle. After Demise loses, he is permanently sealed inside the Master Sword, but not before using his last breath to utter a curse. Demise vows that an incarnation of his hatred, i.e. Ganon, will follow those who share the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero in a never-ending cycle. After defeating Demise, Link then thrusts the Master Sword into the pedestal inside the sealed temple where its spirit, Fi, goes dormant inside the sword forever. While Link and Zelda returns to the present, Impa elects to stay in the past to watch over the Master Sword since the Era of Hylia is her actual time period. Now back in the present, Zelda and Link decide to stay on the surface to watch over the Triforce. They and others from Skyloft repopulated the surface world and their descendants became known as Hylians, and they named the lands around them Hyrule, marking the end of the Sky Era. The Era of Chaos. Now moving further down the timeline, we come to the Era of Chaos. Now we are getting into a darker period of the timeline, which is, if you couldn't tell by the name alone, was a very bloody period of Hyrulean history. Twilight Princess gave us one of the best views into this era in my opinion. After many years of peace and harmony in Hyrule, word spread of a relic with immense power that could grant the heart's desire of anyone who possessed it. War spread throughout the lands, heralding the Era of Chaos. Out of the many warring tribes that coveted the power that the Triforce promised, there was a group of powerful sorcerers that stood above the rest called the Interlopers. They sought dominion over the sacred realm where the Triforce resided. So, to stop the Interlopers from attaining control of both the sacred realm and the Triforce, the goddesses sent the spirits of light to banish them all to the Twilight realm. Not long after that, the Sage of Light, Rauru, built a new Temple of Time around the pedestal that held the Master Sword to protect the Triforce, since the sealed temple was mostly destroyed by the Interlopers before they were banished. The location of the pedestal became the only entrance to the sacred realm. Rauru then placed the Triforce in the Temple of Light and sealed off the sacred realm, sealing himself inside. The Master Sword became the key that joined the Temple of Time to the Temple of Light, and both were closed behind the Door of Time, marking the end of the Era of Chaos, starting a new period of peace. The Era of Prosperity. Now this is probably one of the shortest eras on this timeline. Simply put, the era of peace that the land of Hyrule enjoyed directly after the end of the Era of Chaos allowed for the establishment of the Kingdom of Hyrule by the descendants of, for lack of better words, I'm going to call her Hylia Zelda. These descendants became Hyrule's first royal family, and it was also them who formalized the rule that all princesses born into the Hyrulean royal family must be named Zelda after the goddess. The Force Era. Next, further down the timeline, we move on to the Force Era. During this era, the land of Hyrule was threatened by evil monsters. To save Hyrule, the Minish, but known to the Hylians at that time as the Picori, descended from the skies. With them, they brought the Picori Blade and the Light Force and gifted them to the hero of man. The hero trapped the evil beings inside the bound chest and sealed the chest with the Picori Blade. It was in this era Hyrule saw its first major threat, which was Vati. Now for time constraints, I won't go into full detail about this era since it spans literally 2 games, i.e. the Minish Cap and Four Swords. I may devote a full video to the Force era if you guys would like to see that, just let me know in the comments. The era of the Hero of Time. Moving right on into the era of the Hero of Time, which is arguably the most iconic era of Hyrulean history for obvious reasons. I don't know, Ocarina of Time perhaps? Anyway, now with the kingdom well established, Hyrule enters a long period of civil war. During the war, a mortally injured Hyrulean woman flees to the Kokiri forest and entrusts her baby, i.e. Link, to the Great Deku Tree. The boy in turn is raised as a Kokiri. Not long after this happened, the current king of Hyrule ends the war, unifying the kingdom. Now just for context, I'll give a brief rundown of the events of Ocarina of Time since it is very important that you have a good understanding of this era because this is where the timeline split occurs. Ganondorf, which is the human incarnation of Demise's hatred and current Gerudo king, declares his fealty to the king of Hyrule but plots to open the door of time to steal the Triforce. To open the gate of time, he needs 3 treasures: the Kokiri Emerald, the Zora Sapphire, and the Goron Ruby. Ganondorf curses the Great Deku Tree to extort the emerald from the guardian of the forest. And with his dying breath, the Great Deku Tree sets Link on a quest to stop Ganondorf. At Hyrule Castle, Link meets Princess Zelda, who just like Link had a premonition about Ganondorf's true intentions, so the two devised a plan to open the door of time and get the Triforce before Ganondorf. This of course turned out not to be such a good idea, since when Link opens the door of time and draws the Master Sword from the pedestal of time, he is sealed within the Chamber of Sages for 7 years. While Link was sealed away and later awakening as the Hero of Time, Ganondorf took advantage of the open gate of time and entered the Sacred Realm. He captured the Triforce and transformed Hyrule into a world plagued with monsters. But due to Ganondorf's imbalanced heart, the Triforce split into 3 pieces, with him retaining only the piece that most fitted his nature, which was the Triforce of Power. The Triforce of Courage went to Link, and the Triforce of Wisdom went to Zelda. Furthermore, the Sacred Realm was transformed into the Evil Realm due to Ganondorf's evil heart. Long story short, using the combined power of the Master Sword and the 7 Sages, Link and Zelda sealed Ganondorf into the Evil Realm, with Ganondorf vowing to destroy Link and Zelda's descendants whenever he breaks free again. After that, Zelda uses the Ocarina of Time to return Link to his own time, where Link places the Master Sword back into its pedestal and closes the door of time. Now I want you to put a mental pin on this ending because this is where the timeline split occurs. The Fallen Hero Timeline, Child Timeline, and Adult Timeline. At the very ending of Ocarina of Time, the timeline splits into 3 branches, and each of them are alternatives, or as I like to call them, for lack of better words, what-if events. Whether Link defeats Ganondorf in battle at the end of Ocarina of Time, or if Ganon defeats Link, any of which outcomes send the story in different directions. But first things first, I will start with the Fallen Hero Timeline, and rather than devote a specific section to each of these timelines, I will just briefly explain what they represent chronologically to the story. Simply put, the Fallen Hero Timeline is the alternative timeline that occurs if Ganondorf defeats the Hero of Time. In this timeline, Ganondorf takes both Link and Zelda's piece of the Triforce, gaining the full power of the Triforce, and as a last-ditch effort, Princess Zelda and the 7 Sages seal Ganondorf and the Triforce into the corrupted Sacred Realm, which is now known as the Dark World. This timeline encompasses the events of several Zelda titles such as A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, The Oracle of Seasons and The Oracle of Ages, A Link Between Worlds, Triforce Heroes, The Legend of Zelda, and The Legend of Link. And newly added to this list, we have Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. Now that does it for the Fallen Hero Timeline. Now let's move on to what happens if the Hero of Time successfully defeats Ganondorf and is sent back to his own time. This event caused 2 additional splits in the timeline, which are the Child Timeline and the Adult Timeline. The Child Timeline, or Child Era, is the direct event that occurs after Link is returned back to his time by Zelda at the end of Ocarina of Time. The young hero is able to warn the royal family, thus stopping his rise to power. This literally rendered all of the terrible things that Ganondorf did during Ocarina of Time to never have happened, since he was stopped and declared a criminal by the royal family. Link then leaves on Epona in search of Navi. This is where the beginning of Majora's Mask starts, and alternatively, many years later in the same timeline, this is where the events of Twilight Princess occur as well. since during Twilight Princess we find Ganondorf sent to the Arbiter's grounds as a prisoner and a condemned man. Also under the child timeline, we have the events of Four Swords Adventure, where after Ganondorf's demise at the hands of the hero of Twilight, the Hylians reconciled with the Gerudo tribe and peace prevailed over Hyrule, at least until a new Ganon was born to the Gerudo tribe, who was the direct reincarnation of the Twilight Princess Ganondorf. Next, let's move on to the adult timeline. The adult timeline, or adult era, is an alternative branch of the timeline in which, after Link is sent back in time by Zelda, he flat out disappears from Hyrule. Now where he's gone, heaven only knows. Anyway, in this timeline, Ganondorf is sealed inside the corrupted Sacred Realm or Dark World along with the Triforce of Power. Zelda keeps possession of the Triforce of Wisdom, but the fate of Link is not certain. After Link is sent back in time, the Triforce of Courage is left behind, shattered in 8 shards that were scattered all across Hyrule, and Zelda herself returned the Master Sword to the Temple of Time. This timeline contains the events of The Wind Waker, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. Where on the timeline does Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom take place? So now that we know where each Zelda game chronologically sits on the timeline, let's discuss where on the timeline do I think Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sit. My theory is that the events of Breath of the Wild takes place during an era so long after the events of each game that their events have faded into myth with no one to verify historical fact from fiction. This of course brings us full circle to the notion that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom retconned most of the events that led up to these games. I don't think Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom retconned the timeline because we know that Hyrule has been destroyed and reborn several times. The Great Flood that occurred during the era without a hero in the adult timeline is a great example of this. This is why I lean more towards the idea that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom sit closer to the adult timeline branch than any other timeline branch on this list. The events of both games could also occur at a convergence of the timelines, depending on how you interpret the events, of course. The Court's conclusion. And there you have it, the full Zelda timeline broken down in chronological order. I hope this video was helpful to you guys to better understand the storyline of Zelda and how each game's events converge with one another. It is very rare that I get into the discussion of the Zelda timeline since it is a topic of division in the fandom, not saying I don't love a good Zelda debate, but I do like to keep things fun and lighthearted on my channel. Always remember guys, no one knows absolutely everything about everything, so be respectful to one another. That being said, I really liked making this video and I've learned quite a bit about Zelda from my own research. So tell me, what did you think about my breakdown of the Zelda timeline? Did you love it, or hate it and think that the video should be thrown into the Death Mountain crater? Or are you neutral? Also, which events in either of these Zelda games would you like me to do a video on? Maybe the era without a hero, the Great Flood, or even the Golden Era? I'd love to hear your opinion in the comments. Oh, and don't forget to check out Chrisbkingdom The Fellowship over on Patreon if you want to support the channel, as well as access some of the great content and perks we offer over there. If you can't join right now, don't worry about it. You just liking, commenting, and subscribing helps the channel in ways you can't imagine. Have a positive and blessed rest of your day. This has been Chris of Chrisbkingdom signing out. The council is dismissed.